Hey, hello everybody. We are on day 2 of the free web development bootcamp with Class Central, and we are going to have a very easy. We're going to hear my doorbell a couple more times, I bet, but we're going to ignore that and have a very easy lesson. So, who joined us? Say hey if you joined us yesterday for the HTML. Yesterday, if you were here, it's going to keep happening, isn't it? We learned about HTML as a language that puts content on your website. That's cool. So we do texts and images, and we learned about links. And then, because I am the meanest teacher in the world, I asked all of you to continue to learn the forms by yourself. How did you like the forms? Were they easy? Were they okay? How did you get help? Yeah, these are really fun questions. I think forms are a little bit hard personally, but doable. Let's have a look at how much we've done so far. I'm going to share my screen nice and slow and in a super relaxed way. Yeah, amazing. So yesterday we did the HTML together. We got through about 37 just as forms started getting hard. And then I was like, okay, can you finish the rest on your own? Yeah. And today we're going to start learning basic CSS and we're going to build a cafe menu. We're not going to get through all of this. That's okay. It's still really important that you do some of this learning on your own. Yeah. Why? Partially because we learn more when we sort of bump against things we don't understand. But also, programming is super social when you're on a team. But a lot of times you'll need to work out hard problems on your own. So hopefully these streams are, let's try some of these together. And I'm so sorry. I'm going to go. Nope, you know what? Everything's fine. So here we've got the CSS we're going to do. And let's start our project. So we're going to build this very realistic looking cafe menu. I like how they don't have a currency mark because I can't tell whether or not 3 currencies would be a lot or a little. But we've got a title up here, which I bet is in HTML. What do we think that is? Maybe an H1. We've got a little image here, an image here as well. But we've got a lot of styling going on. Let's come on in. We feeling great? Let's start coding. So, who was it yesterday? Somebody was like, wait, why don't we have to type DOCTYPE HTML? And it was because it sort of did it for us last time. This time we're going to have to do it. And we're going to go a little bit fast just because we can come back and watch these later if we need some help. We've got DOCTYPE HTML tag. Yeah. And don't worry if you didn't finish yesterday. Everything continues to be okay. We're going to have an HTML element. Oh, wait, do you know what? Y'all are actually going to have to remind me. Is lang an attribute? HTML? That doesn't, I would have put it in the head myself. Yeah. I should have a close. Oh, heck. I should have a closing HTML tag with the closing slash, huh? So we've got our doctype HTML. And what this does is it declares, says, hello, I'm writing a document for the web. By the way, the type of this document is going to be HTML. And then we've started and ended our HTML element here. And then we've said, by the way, for this specific one, we're just going to be throwing in, just going to be writing in English, and that's okay. Oh, I see a couple people who are saying, oh, I couldn't make it yesterday. That is not a problem. All of this is designed so you can go at your own pace. There's no attendance. Nothing bad is going to happen. Our tests pass, so we get a little sigh of relief, and we get to bop on to the next challenge. Everything is, all of y'all are like, hey, close the HTML tag. Saints, every one of you. Ooh, so this is the head element I was talking about, and I'm actually going to close this one. Yeah. So it says make a head element. And then inside here, I'm going to do a title element. Okay, I can do that too. Everything's fine and everything's going to be fine. The big thing I want to push is these are just websites. This is just programming, and it can't hurt you. If you mess up one of these steps, it's not a big deal. The tests will tell you what roughly went wrong, and it's just a website. Here we want to say the title text should be cafe menu, but I'm very lazy. So I'm going to copy using Control C. So highlight, Command C. I'm going to paste it in here, Control V. Yeah. I'm moderately confident we can check our code. It's fine. It's fine. We can just keep bopping along. We're on step 3 already. Everything is fine. So the title is one of several elements that provide extra information, but it's not visible on your website. And you say, oh, Jess, that's weird. We saw our cafe menu and it said cafe menu on the top. Isn't that the same as our title? Oh, so we've got folks saying, hey, can we use codes in CSS? Well, we'll cover those. Yeah. Oh, somebody's saying they think CSS is easier than Python. I will lovingly disagree with you because I think CSS is super hard. But that's the thing. Different things are hard and easy for different people. Although Python's not that easy either, is it? So we've got our title. And you might say, well, Jess, a title shows on the page, doesn't it? But you're watching me on YouTube or on Twitch, I think. If you look up to the very top of your window, what does it say? Does it say like, if you're in YouTube, does it say YouTube and then the title of the stream or something? Yeah. So that's the title. Not you don't always have to have an H1 with your title on it. Inside our head element, so in here, we're going to nest a meta element. And we're going to do this so many times, and it's going to be so annoying for you all that I consistently forget. Here we're going to set the character set, and this is saying what kinds of characters we're going to be using. UTF-8 is just a very modern way to say, hey, I want to use this type of encoding, this kind of standard for our characters. And UTF-8 will cover almost everything you want to cover. So these days, just go ahead and use that one. I think even it used to be much friendlier for Western languages, but it's gotten much, much better for global characters. I'm gonna check our code. And remember that our meta element's self-closing. It's one of those tricky, it's like an irregular verb. So we've got our head under our body. We're going to, wait, under our head. There we are. Everything's fine. We've got to have a body. We're never going to add a neck. That would be a little bit weird. We're going to say open our body. That's chill. We're going to close our body, which actually saying we're going to close our, sounds a little bit weird, huh? We're going to check our code. And you might be a little annoyed and you say, Jess, you told me we were going to be doing CSS today, but we're still reviewing HTML. I got it. We're going to go super fast through the HTML bit. Cool. This is saying, please give me some money. Yeah. But this is not obligatory. Free Code Camp, the folks who make our curriculum, are a nonprofit. So if you feel like giving them a lemon, and if you have a little bit of money, it's a cool thing to do, but don't you spend money you don't have. It is a stressful time right now. So the name of our cafe is Camper Cafe. Let's create an H1 and let's close our H1 just to go ahead and get in. Oh, Jay is saying, hey, the meta tag defines the metadata, the information about the page that we're sending our browser. Ashraf is saying the same thing in a really, really useful way. You know what? That's us talking directly to our browser and say, here's what we're going to be doing. This is super important. Y'all, these are so I love to see you helping each other. Because the happiest programmers are lazy ones, I'm going to copy the name of this. And I'm going to paste. And immediately we see this say Camper Cafe. This is our most important heading. But the big can change. It's all green. Everything's fine. So we're going to add a paragraph element, and we're going to do this super fast to make it feel dizzying. That's going to say establish 2020. which seems like a very scary time to open a cafe. And boom, we've got it right here. Everything's fine. We're going to go faster. Okay. So we're going to add a header element. And a header element is a really important semantic element. You won't always have one, but this is telling who uses semantic elements. This is telling folks who are using assistive technologies like screen readers, or this is telling robots that visit your site like search engine bots. Hey, this is the header information. And we've nested that. You know what best practices would be to indent this, wouldn't it? And that's sitting inside of our header. That's super chill. I'm going to check our code. Everything continues to be fine. Let's get some content. We've got a header. How are we going to tell semantically our visitors that this is the main part of the site? We're going to add a main piece here. We'll add some other stuff later. It's fine. Even faster, even faster. Ha ha ha. Have a section. Close our section. We're going to have two sections. And this is one of our sections is going to be for all the coffees available and one for desserts. Because I'm lazy, all the happiest programmers are lazy. I'm just going to write one section and copy and paste it. And you say, Jess, indentation is terrible. I say, I know, I'm sorry. In a perfect world, heck, well, you know, in a perfect world, we don't have to do any programming. We want to have these indented in the same kind of way. But usually it'll do it for you if you're using a text editor. And we'll talk about text editor on sort of a supplement session soon. Go to our next site. We're going to put an H2 in our section element. And we've already given you a little spoiler that that's for coffee. Not a problem. Okay. I think that's completely fine. So right now, we've just been doing HTML, right? We are going to get a little tiny bit fancy. I'm going to add a style element. And this is going to feel weird because I'm going to show you how to do this in a very old-fashioned way. Back in my day, when I made my first website, we didn't even have CSS. But well, a little bit. We did have sort of these style tags come in early. I'm going to bring this in, and I'm going to have a style element with it. These don't feel like they're self-clothing. And right now, one thing that we haven't talked about at all is files. So right now, we're in an HTML file. You can make one of these at your desktop, like on your desktop. If you use Notepad or any kind of very plain text editor, you can create a file called index.html is what you do for your main homepage. But you can save a file, an HTML file, and then open it in a browser, and it'll feel just like your website would feel. Later, so we're writing CSS and HTML both in the same file conceptually. But in a minute, we're going to start doing something scary, and we're going to have two different files to work from. Y'all like scary? I mean, whether or not you like scary, it's always going to be a little bit stressful. So we've got a style element in our head, but there's nothing here yet. It's cool. Everything's cool. I'm going to check our code. It says everything's fine. We're going to hop on. Now, what is this? What is this? What is going on? We're really used to HTML. This is our second day. We're HTML experts. But HTML has our like pointy babies. This is not a pointy baby. I'm seeing some wiggly babies instead. And these wiggly brackets are a very different deal. Oh, look at this Dove. Look at you, after my own heart. Dove is like, what we're writing here is inline CSS. And heck yes, we are. This is inline CSS. CSS is a different language, so it feels super, super weird. And I'm joyously terrible at it. So y'all are going to have to consistently be like, Jess, no. So the way we write CSS is we set an element, and then we use these wiggly braces. So the element is going to be the HTML element we're going to do something to. And what we're saying here is, hey, or maybe we'll ask nicely. We'll say, excuse me, browser, when you see this element, when you see this HTML character, I want you to do a CSS trick. I like to think that CSS, yeah, I always like to think of CSS as my friendly puppy. And these properties are tricks it already knows that we have to learn. So we've got a very, very well trained CSS puppy, and it knows a bunch of tricks. We just need to learn the tricks it knows. And here's the value. I say, hey, when you see this element, and this will feel less abstract in a second. Actually, let's type it out as we go. So the element is our H1, right? Here it says center our H1 element. Okay. Here's our element. Like it says element here in the green. We're saying H1. And then we got some curly babies. Curly brackets, curly braces is probably a little bit more professional, but we're very unfamiliar with our CSS. Our property, the trick that CSS knows how to do for us and wants to do, is text align. And we're going to set the value at that little colon to say, hey, here's a value. We're going to set that to center. Oh, dang. As soon as we said, oh, excuse me, when you find an H1 on this page, use the text align property and set it to center. You think we can do other stuff with it? What does left do? What does right do? Okay, cool. So we can get a little weird. So we're writing some inline CSS. We're going to center this. And some of you may know that we are going to add a semicolon at the end of this. And that's because CSS doesn't know when to stop. When we add a semicolon, we're saying, hey, I'm done with this style rule. And that gives you the chance to write a second style or tons more styles. But it's just good practice, even if you're only writing the one, to go ahead and put your semicolon down. I'm not very confident in this, so let's check our code. It's fine. Everything's fine. We're going to go on to the next challenge. Nothing bad is happening. Nothing's hurting us. So when we said H1, when we specified this element, we were using a type selector. And this is super important because we're going to learn a couple of different CSS selectors. And these were really hard for me to understand. What happens if I have two H1s on, actually, this is an open question. What happens if I have two H1s on this page? Would they all be centered? I think they might be, because we've said, hey, whenever you see an H1 element, apply these rules. But you can also use something called class. And class is a little bit like creating a club. We'll talk about those in a minute. But you can also use ID and you say, oh, I only want this to be for an individual. I only want this to be for one very special element. And that's okay too. Where am I? Where are we? So that would change all of the. Let's go ahead and center all of. Ooh, there's a couple way to do this. So I think I could just do a comma and a P, but so I could say, hey, here's an H rule for all of my H1s and all of my paragraphs. But here it's telling us to set a new type selector for each one. Look at this free code campus like Jess. Don't you be too lazy, but I'm going to be lazy. H2, we got our curly babies. Text, align. We're doing the exact same thing. It can't hurt us. And we're going to center it again. Oh, it does feel a little weird to be doing the same thing 3 times, doesn't it? But after a while, you get the muscle memory, doesn't it? We're going to do text align one more time. We're going to center that one again. Everything's fine and everything's going to be fine. Gently confident this will go green. Yeah, let's pop on. So we've got 3 selectors with, oh, look at this. It made us do it the hard way, and now it's going to let us do it the easy way. So it says, hey, you can group these all together. You can be a little lazy. So it says, delete the extra 2. Ooh, delete the extra 2. And most of the time when I make a mistake with CSS, it's a typo, which is very embarrassing. Or sometimes I delete the wrong curly baby, and that's also very embarrassing. But it's saying, hey, We can have multiple selectors separated by a comma. Let's go ahead and do that. I think as soon as I write my comma, and as soon as I write the 2 for H2, jump right over. And as soon as I write my P, so this is just as soon as it sees that this rule belongs to the selector, it's going to go ahead and hop along and fix it. We are going to check our code. Everything continues to be fine. It's just CSS. It can't hurt us. Everything's cool. So remember how I just said it's just CSS and it can't hurt us and everything's cool? Now it starts to get conceptually harder. Wahahaha. So now we've got 2 different files, and we're going to have to sort of tab between them to see what's going on. We've still got our HTML, but now all of our HTML lives in a separate file. Ooh. And here we've got a CSS file. Oh, heck. Here we But our CSS file is completely empty. Isn't that terrifying? What do our rules say? Oh, there we are. So I've created 3 files inside my style tags, writing inline CSS, but now I want to take those out. I want to get rid of my style tags, and I want to put the rules in the CSS. Can anybody tell me the laziest way to do this? Oh, while I'm waiting for an answer about the laziest way to do this, Frank's got a really good point. And this concept is going to come up again and again in different kinds of programming, that attributes come in a pair of properties and values. And that might feel really familiar. So if you're doing, we'll try and maybe take a look at a database later on. But yeah, the idea that there's a property and a value pair is going to be something we see again and again. It's a really big, really squishy computing concept, isn't it? Oh, look at y'all. Danny's like, hey, just copy it. Logan's like, oh, look at this. Control C. All of y'all are after my own heart to be like, look, you don't have to type all this. And I refuse to type it all out. Lazy as I am. So I know we've got to get rid of our style tags. I'm going to get rid of those now just to make sure they're gone. Yeah. And then I'm going to grab the CSS because I don't think she belongs on this page. And you know what? I'm also going to get rid of this white space. The white space doesn't really matter. It just feels a little bit neater to have that gone. Do you know what? I'm going to ignore all of my HTML. I'm only looking at my CSS file here, and it's completely empty. Isn't that scary? But I'm going to paste it. So this is the exact same CSS we had when we were inline. And I think it's going to work perfectly. And it works perfect. Really, it works perfectly because y'all gave me the lazy way to do this. Let's keep going. So now that our CSS lives in the styles, we have one more problem. It's not a real problem. It's not a big problem. It's cool. Oh, wait, we cheated. We hopped ahead. It said, now that you've copied it, it didn't say copy, but now that it says copy, get rid of your inline CSS. And when we do, this is going to be a really hard question. We're going to learn in the next step what's wrong with this. And it's not really wrong. It's just teaching us something that's wrong. Why is my HTML not being styled according to these style rules? Ooh. I think that, yeah, give me a guess. Why does the CSS not know about the style rules in the other file? That's probably a good hint. While we do this, this told me to just remove it. And I bet when we hop on to the next one, it's going to tell me why. Yeah. Y'all are absolutely right. We've got folks saying, hey, it just doesn't know about the CSS file. And you're right. So we just have 2 different files sitting in the same place. They're not friends yet. Yeah, y'all are like, come on. You've got to link to them. You all are absolutely right. So we're not using an aref like we would link to another link on that's visible to your users. But we do want to create a new element called a link element. Is that self-closing? Oh, I guess we'll see. And we're going to set the rel attribute to style sheet. And here we're saying, hey, browser, I'm going to give you two files. Here's your HTML, which you have, but I'm also going to give you a link to this other file. And when I say rel, I'm like, by the way, it's a style sheet, just so you know what to do with it. And here, I'm going to set that ref. Remember, we think of a ref as throwing a big anchor, leaving a chain between one to the other. I'm going to set the ref to styles. Oh, because that's the name of our file up here, isn't it? Styles.css. Cool. And as soon as we finish the name of the file, it pops all of our style rules in. That's chill. Okay, so if we have two files, HTML and CSS, and we just need to make sure that we add a link, that we let our browser know that there's two files. That's chill. And I know it seems really unfair because I just taught you about how to do links yesterday. This is just a little bit different. This is a special link you're giving your browser, not for your users. We've got a green stripe. We can keep going. Ooh. So this is exciting. Do you ever use websites where they look really different on your phone and really different on a computer? Yeah? This is something that web developers do on purpose, and we're going to do a ton of it towards the end of the boot camp. But here, we're going to add this inside the head element. So this is another meta tag. We're going to add the name is viewport. So hey, here's what I'm doing. And this is saying, hey, here's a rule about the device content width. And the initial scale is going to be 1.0. This isn't going to make a lot of sense right now. And one of the cruelest things we do to new developers is we say, oh, you'll understand this later on. And that always feels a little bit like saying, well, you'll understand when you're older. I promise this is just to get you into the habit, just into the muscle memory. We are going to learn more about this when we learn about, oh no, I've forgotten a very fundamental computer word. Responsiveness. And this is I'm going to pretend I did that on purpose, which is that it's okay to have little brain wumbles. So we've been going for about half an hour. Do you want to take a little tiny break and answer a couple questions? And this means if you want to grab a cup of tea or if you want to get a little snack, go. We'll come back in about 3 minutes, but this is always available on replay, so there's no hurry. Oh, and y'all are answering each other's questions. So this is a nice sort of cheat. Jay's asking this really, really good question to say, hey, what's the difference between, let's go and find it in this, what's the difference between this rel that we put in for our link and ref? And this is really, really good. We've got folks, Israel's like, Israel, I'm going to bully you to teach this instead of me. And Logan's answering the exact same thing in a different way and saying, well, rel's the relationship. It's the type. It's what kind of link this is. And Logan said this, hey, rel is short for relation. Y'all are fantastic. And it says that's telling our browser what the deal is. Yeah. Whereas ref is the hypertext reference. That's the same throwing the chain and being able to find it. Oh, heck, that's a good one where it's like, oh, you know what? Browser issues are the funnest issues, isn't it? Does anybody else have a couple more questions before we head right back into everything being a little bit stressful? Well, just a little bit. It's just CSS. It can't hurt us. I'm actually going to grab a little tiny bit of water as well. Yeah. Yeah. Ready? There's no hurry. There's no worry, but we're just going to keep going. Okay, so no, don't. I'm going to be mean to you just a tiny bit. Don't apologize for asking questions. It's super okay. So what we're talking about responsiveness, making websites look different on different sizes or different types of screens. I was just previewing something we're going to learn later. This right here, Meta, name, viewport, content, with device. This is giving us a preview of the kinds of things we're going to do with responsiveness, but we haven't learned anything about that yet. I don't expect you to know that this is us just getting used to the language before we learn more about what happens. Yeah, everything's scary, everything's hard, but this can't hurt us. Let's jump right back in. Yeah, my loves? Sorry, that's terribly familiar. My loves, y'all are all grown. So, really, this was asking us to copy and paste in this meta tag for responsiveness that we don't understand yet. Yeah, we'll learn about it in a second. Oh, I'm going to answer one more question before I zip on. I've got, hey, why is it just style CSS and not dot style CSS? Ooh, I'm going to be mean. I'm always mean. I would try this on step, gosh, what step were you? I would try this on step 17 and see if the slash passes and see if the slash and dot passes. I think the slash will definitely pass. I'm not sure if the dot will work just because of the way browsers do files. But really, I didn't add the slash because we don't really need it. On our website, our HTML and CSS files will usually be right next to each other in the same server space. So if I say, go get that style CSS, yeah, it's sort of the same conceptual folder. Yeah. And if you're building these on your local computer, put them in the same actual folder. Let's keep going. We're just going to go a little bit more. I'm going to be mean again. We're not going to get you through the whole thing because I really want to see you do some of this on your own as well. But we're going to do some colors and we're going to do way more colors tomorrow, but we're just getting a little taste of colors. Yeah. So add another style to the, so here we're going to get the body element. And we don't have to think about, do we mean every single body element? Because there's only one body. So we've got our body element, we've got our little curly babies, and we're learning a new property right now, background color. And somebody asked a really good question yesterday, and it was, hey, which English are we using? And this looks like the American color, so I think it might be American English. I'm American myself, so very familiar, but live in England, so I always sort of bore with myself wanting to put that U in there. Background, and we're going to set it to brown, and I think the very second I put the pen down, it's going to turn brown. Oh, kind of reddy brown on my computer, isn't it? Ooh. I mean, that's a very intense brown, but we'll learn. Oh, somebody's going to have to check my work. We'll learn 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways to do colors in CSS. We'll get a lot more granularity in our colors. Our code passes. Let's keep going. So, this brown is too much. We're going to set the background color to burlywood. Isn't that lovely? And you say, Jess, how do you know which CSS colors you can use keywords for? And I say, I have no idea. I have to look it up. Yeah. So burlywood gives us this really much more cream color. We feel a lot chiller with this. Let's keep going. Div. We're going to use so many divs. And divs are really going to prove my point. If you were around yesterday, I told you that almost every HTML element is an imaginary or less imaginary rectangle. And divs are going to help this feel much more real. But actually, let's talk about rectangles right now. Do you believe me that this H1 is a rectangle? Do you believe it? Let's make them all. Let's get weird for a second because that's what I've been promising. Let's make them all rectangles so we can see. And we're going to do that with color. We're going to do our H1. We're going to set our background color to pink. Rectangle. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to copy and paste. It's not really cheating. And I'm going to set the background color. Ooh, this one's hard. We know that HTML is written from the top down, right? So we think maybe, it's red from the top down. We think maybe CSS is read from the top down as well. Yeah, somebody's asking, what do you mean a div is a rectangle? I'm going to show you in a second. But really, every HTML element is a rectangle. It's super weird. What happens if I set this to 2 different colors? Ooh, so I said, hey, make my H1 pink. And I said, hey, make my H1 yellow. And what's happening behind the scenes is my browser's reading my CSS from the top down, and it made it pink for a second. And then it said, no, you want it yellow. And I said, I don't want it yellow. I want my H2 to be yellow. Rectangle. So these are all rectangles. Images are rectangles, even if they're round. They're all blocks. You say, Jess, that's so weird. It is so weird. But stick with me. So we're going to make a div. And a div is like an empty box you can put other stuff in. And you say, Jess, you've said box too many times. It's meaningless. I know. I'm sorry. But here, go away, styles. I want HTML. I'm going to make a div element inside the body element. So right here, I'm going to make an empty imaginary box. Oh, you know what? This is a way better way to describe it. You say, thank you very much for this. You say, well, you know what? When Jess says that something's a rectangle, it means that the conceptual space taken up on your screen is laid out in a rectangle. This is a so much nicer way to describe that. Really, you should be describing this. Oh, and you know what? Frank is saying, hey, you know what? It's the cascading rule. If you set 2 different rules for the same element, it's going to take the last one. We tried to make it pink, but then you asked for yellow. Yellow's the last thing you ordered. So that's what we're going to go with. Yeah. So inside our body, under our body, and right before our body ends, we're going to make a div. And you'll notice that our div did nothing. Right now, it's just an empty box. It's a conceptual box that has our header and our main in it. Okay. Here it said add a div element and move all of the other elements in it. But we're very lazy. We knew that we wanted everything in here inside our div. So we just wrote our div around where it sits. I bet I can check my code. And it says, perfect, sublime. All of your code is in an imaginary box. You may go to the next step. So now we're gonna get weird. Yeah. I mean, I should calm down. Now we will get a little weird. I'm still excited to get weird. We're going to take our imaginary box and we're going to stretch it and squish it and do stuff to it. Not just change the background. But we're going to change how wide it is. Yeah? I'm going to set a new type of selector. And we've done this 2 or 3. It probably still feels weird, but let's try it. So here we've got an example of our selector for a body. Yeah. Here we've got a selector for H1, H2, and paragraph. I'm going to do a new one for our div. Cool. And here, we're going to set, it doesn't tell us what property. We have to use a little tiny bit of problem solving. It says I want to create a selector that gives my div element a width of 300 pixels. How do I find out how to do this? There's 3 different things you can do. You can ask for help, right? You can look it up online, or you can experiment. Let's experiment as we go, yeah? So, where am I? What are we doing? So somebody's asking, well, what's the point of main if we can just put it in a div? That's really important. I'm not going to embarrass you, I hope. So why is main? Main is one of these things that holds semantic meaning. So if I'm using a screen reader or if I've got a robot from a search engine coming, I'm going to want to know where the main stuff is here. Whereas this div we're using, we're kind of just using it to apply CSS rules to. We're using this to, heck. We'll come back to that question. Well, I clicked it, so I'll have to. Speaking of experiments, is it possible to have 2 sets of rules and 2 different background colors horizontally? I think that we will absolutely do explicitly this thing tomorrow. which kind of gives you a spoiler that we can. So we could look it up. I'm going to guess. I want to set the width of my selector. I wonder if width might not be a property. Yeah. And like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Then we can look it up. Width. And one thing that's going to be super weird is there's a, oh, okay. It is super weird. We saw our text jump over to the left. But we can't really tell if it's 300 pixels or if it's moved to the left. How about we set our background color? And this is just a check. This is our little test. Now let's set that to pink. Oh. So we do think that this has changed the width. Let's cut this. Ooh. So, okay, our width tag did move it over because the natural flow is to keep this to the left. But it did indeed change the width exactly like we wanted. Do you want to keep going just a little bit? And if you ask a really important question and we don't manage to get to it, please come to the forum and please come to the Discord and we will joyously sort you out. Oh gosh, if you're just finding us off of YouTube or Twitch or whatever, hello. We're teaching a completely free programming bootcamp and it's super, you can come and join us if you want, or you can just hang out on streams. There's no obligation to do anything. We're going to keep going. Comments. We got this. We did this with HTML. Remind me, why might I leave a comment in my HTML or why might I leave a comment in my CSS? While you do that, I'm going to add a comment because comments in CSS are really cool. They're like a little slashy do, and then a star, and then a star, and a little slashy do. I think that's slashy do is obviously the very technical term, isn't it? So, ooh, we're going to go ahead and this is a really valuable additional thing that you get in programming. And this is us commenting out our code. So when our browser sees a comment, it doesn't run it. It's like, oh, wait. That's just a little note Jess left for herself. But when I say, oh, I want to stop this piece of code from being active, I can comment it out. And you're going to hear that again and again. Comment out. And as soon as I start wrapping this in a comment, my browser says, oh, cool. You want me to ignore this. Yeah. Let's check our code. Okay, and you'll see this a lot on other programming streams, but somebody says, well, something's broken. Let's comment out this piece of code and see if it works without that. Ooh, so we already have our div selector. And what we're going to do here, I'm going to call you out to the floor for this and say, do you know what? Because I love this. It's a good practice. It's a good habit to get into. Gives you notes, leaves you hints for other programmers, lets people know what you were thinking when you did it. Oh, that's super chill. So up here on line 7, we've got an H1, H2, and a paragraph. We've got multiple selectors. And then on line 8, we have one rule for it. But we can do the opposite as well. We can set multiple rules for one selector. So here we've got no background color at all because we've commented it out way up here on lines 2 to 4. We come right back down here. Boop, boop, boop. We're going to set the background color only of our div, only of our box. Background. It's so embarrassing. Whenever people can see you type, you always make the worst typos. And we're going to set it to burlywood. And we've just got a little tiny box, a little brown background color, showing us that div is most decidedly a rectangle. I'm going to check our code and it says we're cool. We're cool. Everything's cool. So we see our text is centered within the div element. And currently the way we've set our div is in pixels. But pixels aren't going to be great if we're on a different screen, right? Pixels are an absolute value. Actually, let's go ahead and come to, actually, I'm going to set a good example for a second. Just share my screen. Oh, I've got to stop sharing my screen before I can share my screen. Chrome tab. We're going to do a web search to find out what's going on. Yeah? Yeah. So I've got DuckDuckGo up. Some of you like Google, some of you like Brave, some of you like Bing. That's fine. I'm not use whatever you like. Here I want to say, what's a pixel? I'm going to search specifically for MDN. Okay, cool. Well, they've got a glossary and they've even got a CSS pixel for me. Okay, cool. Yeah, a CSS pixel is a unit of absolute length. So it's going to be the same size whether you're on a really big screen or a small screen. A pixel is a pixel is a pixel. It's like a teeny tiny centimeter, a teeny tiny inch. It's an absolute. Yeah. Oh gosh, they've redesigned MDN. But there's different kinds of lengths. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these. So we've got an inch, a pixel, a CSS pixel. I'm just going to go ahead and drop these in the chat because sometimes I may come and say, oh, instead of using a pixel, we're going to use percent, or I'm going to use an M. And it's going to be weird and wild and chill. Well, as chill as this gets. Let's come back and come right back into our lesson. It's the worst, isn't it, to say, hey, this is going to be hard and weird. Where am I? Where am I? Dawn makes a really good point to say, do you know what? A pixel's not always great for responsiveness because it's that absolute value. It's not relative. Jeff, look at you. Pixel is a picture element. Yeah, everything is chill. So we're going to change this when we say, you know what? A pixel didn't really work for me. I want to set it to 80%. You might say, Jess, 80% of what? And I say, it's cool. Is 80% of the parent element. And you say, what's a parent? Oh no, it's cool. Let's talk about that. Let's get rid of our CSS. And we want to find that div. Here's our div. And the parent element is the element that it sits inside of, the one that it's nested inside of. Yeah? And we see that our div lives inside our body. Okay, cool. So when we say, come back here, Styles, when we say I want to set you to 80%, I want to set you to 80% of the body, which right now is taking up our entire viewport. And we're going to hear viewport said again and again. Viewport is, come here, I'm going to stretch you out. And you see that as I stretch it out, this gets bigger because it's going to keep taking up 80% of the main element. So this is the viewport. This is the tab or the page where your user is looking at it. And if you're on this is why these relative elements are so powerful. If you're on a phone, this viewport is going to be a lot smaller than maybe if you're on a big old chunky monitor. I think, oh, where can I push go? Oh, here we go. I'm good. No, don't restart my step. Check my code. It's green. Everything's fine. Let's keep going. Ooh, now I want to center my div horizontally, and that means uppy downy ways inside of main. Ooh, and we can do this by setting the margin. They're like, yeah, the margin like in a book. Actually, let me get a book. This lets me show off. I don't know the author, and they're not giving me free books, but if they want to, this lets me show off one of the books I really like to recommend to new programmers, which is Laziness Does Not Exist. And this is sort of about not working yourself too hard, my loves. Learning is hard. Oh, but margin is this sort of white space we get right here. And it's not going to be white space it's not necessarily going to be white space on our website, but it's still those areas, the sort of buffers on either side. So we're going to set two properties, margin left and margin right, to auto. Okay. Think of margin as the invisible space, like that white space around your book. It adds invisible space around. Later, we'll learn about padding, and padding's inside, but it adds that invisible space around the outside of your element. It's all chill. Where am I? Oh gosh, I'm just asking y'all, oh, hey, where's my brain? And I'd appreciate if any of you knew where my brain was, but I'm going to cheat and copy margin left. And I'm going to set the property to auto. Oh, dang, it hopped all the way over. What I'm saying here is auto, hey, give me as much margin left as you can. And now we're going to get weird. I say, well, give me as much margin left as you can. Just automate that out. And margin right, I want to auto that too. Ooh. And if I say, hey, give me as much on the left that you can get, do it. And give me as much space on the right as you can, do it. It means you're going to chunk right in the middle. Oh, Frank is asking, this book I was recommending to all of you is called Laziness Does Not Exist. And that's by Dr. Devin Price. And you might say, Jess, why are you recommending a book about laziness and being lazy and being okay being lazy? And it's just because I see so many, not just new developers, but I see so many developers burn out. All right, we set our margin left and right, and we don't have to work too hard. Yeah, I mean, it is hard work, but you don't have to hurt yourself with work. Rest is so valuable, and I want you loves to rest. So we've been using CSS selectors. We've been using type selectors. We're going to learn something new now. We're going to learn about class. Yeah? We're going to change this div into a class, and classes are clubs. I'm going to create a class, and then I'm going to give class membership to some of my elements. And this means that I can give the same rules to all of the elements in my club, even if they're not all a div. And it does mean I can have divs that aren't in the club, that aren't in the class, that don't get that rule. So here, all it's asking us to do, take that away and say, hey, instead of using the div selector, go ahead and set this to a class called menu. And this broke everything. You want to see why it broke? Because if we look at our HTML elements, I don't see the word menu anywhere here. So what we did is we made some rules for a club called menu, and nobody's in the club. We don't have any members in the club. Chaos. I think it's going to fix this for us next. Yeah. It's one of those little tricky things to say, ha ha ha, it definitely broke, but we'll go ahead and unbreak this for you. So now to apply the div's class styling to the div element, that's a mouthful. And what I want to say is, hey, if you want to put your div in the menu club, yeah, we're going to add a new attribute to, sorry, I just lost my train of thought again. We're going to add a new attribute to the div. Menu, wait, no, that's not right at all. The attribute's not called menu. Menu is the value. The attribute is the class. And we're going to say, hey, the club I want you to be in is the menu club. And that styling came back because we already have the rules for this class. We already have the rules for this club all set up. That's super chill. I'm going to check our code. I'm going to pop up. So what I'm actually going to do, we're on step 29 now. I'm going to be evil. And I'm going to come to the curriculum. I'm just going to see how many steps there are all together. Oh, look at, you all did all of those on your own. And don't worry if you didn't do them right away. Oh, dang. There's like 90 of these. Let's keep going a little bit. Oh, this is a really good question. Let's come back. Let's keep doing this for a little while then. We say, hey, why in the HTML is it not dot menu? Oh, where are you? Oh gosh, it's not. Yeah. Why in the, wait, where am I? Why in the HTML is it not dot menu? And that's because the dot in CSS is you telling the browser, yo, this is going to be a class. The next word I say is a club name. So that dot is a CSS specific specification. I don't know if you can have full stops in class names. Ooh, I might try it. So here, we're going to delete the comment. Yeah. Ooh, so we're going to create a background image. And back when I made my first website in 1997, I used background images that really clashed. It was really hard to see, but none of you will ever do that. You're much more reasonable. We're going to set it to the URL. Oh, so we're going to set the value to URL. Okay, so we're saying, hey, I want to have a background image and I want you to go to this URL and get it. Okay, this feels a little bit like a link, but very different syntax because they're different languages, right? And I think we're going to see something weird happen, right? Because right now I've said burlywood for this and burlywood for that. So we're seeing the same cowboy color everywhere, but we're going to change and we're going to see where the div ends and the rest of main goes on. Yeah. Oh, okay. Cool, cool, cool. Oh, platypus. Platypus, I love seeing you. There's never any pressure. But platypus is like, don't you, wait. Platypus is so helpful. Like, don't y'all dare. No full stops. And don't you add a number at the beginning of a CSS name. It just won't work. Oh, you're getting ahead of me. Say, well, what if I want to use an ID? We'll get to an ID. You can totally use an ID, I promise. Oh, and I'm going to answer one more, sneak in one more real good question. Oh, heck. So, Miranda, bring that question to the forum just because it's going to take a little bit more. Why do we use a class if we already have this type selector? Maybe I don't want every single div to use this. Maybe I just want a couple of, or maybe I want a div and a section to both follow this rule. So a class lets us put a bunch of different elements or a couple elements or one element in the same club and set all of the rules for them at once. We use class instead of that to give us a little bit more specificity. We've got this. We're going to check our code. We feel fine. Let's add some menu items. Let's add an article. You say, oh, why an A-R-T-I-C. Hey, Jess, why are we making an article instead of another div? This just seems like another empty box. We're creating an article because it has that semantic meaning. Yeah. It tells computers or assistive technologies. Oh, I'm trying to hustle along, but this is such a good question. This is so much. How do I remember all of this? You're just going to do it again and again and again. But I have been doing web stuff for, well, I'll bet since before you were born. I still have to look stuff up all the time. There's no shame in looking stuff up. So if you do it and do it and do it, you'll remember it more. But it's also completely fine to forget and look it up. Let's pop on. So an article element contains multiple elements. We could put stuff inside here. Let's have a paragraph. Missed 2 paragraphs. Ooh. Yeah, the first one should be French vanilla. And I think we're going to see our div get a little bit longer. Yeah? I think it's going to get a little bit longer because the amount of stuff in our rectangle, we've got more rectangle in our div. Boom. So our div came down and get a little bit longer. Our div doesn't have rules for the size. We haven't given it rules. So it's just sizing itself to fit the content around it. Abdul's asking, can I use a section instead of article? You could. As a general rule, though, always try and pick the CSS, the HTML element that's the most specific. So if you needed to, you could just make all of these divs, all of these rectangles with no extra meaning. But here, article means, hey, I'm making an article. So usually it'd be like a news article or a blog post. Yeah. Yeah. It just carries a different amount of meaning. And this doesn't look like the menu we want at all. So let's see what we're doing next. Okay. So we're going to keep adding some paragraph elements. And y'all know I'm lazy, right? So we want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. Got 1. Copy it. Control C. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Joyously lazy. Caramel macchiato, which sounds terribly fancy. Which is probably like a Starbucks thing, isn't it? And that costs $3.75 monies. A pumpkin spice, which oh gosh, we're coming into pumpkin spice season. I don't think I've ever had one. Ooh, if anybody has, do you recommend them? And that costs $3.50 monies. Hazelnut, which weirdly costs more than the pumpkin spice. I'm not here to judge, which costs 4 monies. And then a mocha. And I know it's a bit boring to watch me copy and paste. I'm so sorry, my love. So it costs 450 monies. Oh, chill. I'm going to check my code. What? What? 5 article elements? Okay. So this is asking me to do something that's really common sense. And I did not read the instructions. This is saying, hey, every article should just have the product and the price. I'm going to cheat a little bit. And I'm going to cut here and paste here. Let's keep our... Oh, that looks better. Let's go ahead and keep... Oh, heck, where am I? What's going on? I'm going to go ahead and keep copying and pasting just to go fast. So under this article, we start a brand new article. And then under the price, we close it. I know, I'm not keeping my indentation neat. The worst teacher. Ah. Right under that, we start a new article. And under the price, you know what? I'm going to be even lazier. Under the price, we close it. Not even going to keep switching. Add that slash. And now I'm going to come under where that ended and start a new article. Okay, cool. And then down here, I'm going to add the slash and end it. And then down, I'm going to start my last. And you notice that as I'm doing this, not a single thing changes style-wise. We haven't set any rules for these articles, have we? Yeah. Where am I? Where am I? Here we go. Check our code. Nothing bad has happened. It's green. Everything's chill. Let's keep bopping along. And look, this is saying, well, you know, right now, this is just stacked on top of each other. It would be really nice if these were spaced out in like a rational way, in a prettier way. So we're going to add a class name here. And this is going to give you a better idea of why we're using classes. And we're going to set this class to, we're going to write this. We're going to set this class to flavor. And do you know what? For some reason, the American spelling of flavor vexes me. Okay, and the only thing it's asked us to do is set this class. I think we push go. Yeah, everything's fine. Ooh, and now that we've got our flavor class, we're going to use a class selector, and that's a full stop. And I always like to remember this by saying, stop, I'm going to do a class. Or stop, I'm talking about a club. Flavor. And then we're going to use our little wiggly babies and say text line. And we're gonna send you way over to the left. Oh, dang. Oh, dang. That's so not. Although, why haven't the other flavors moved? I think none of the other flavors have moved because when I look at my HTML, I only have this class flavor on French vanilla. I think that the next step is probably going to ask me, yeah, green, beautiful, perfect. I think the next one's probably going to ask me to add. That's not at all what I expected, but that makes sense. Here, it wants me to create another type of class, and that is price. I see what you're doing. Do y'all see what it's doing? The class is equal to the value of price. Nothing has changed. We've got somebody asking, how long is the class? We'll probably go ahead another 5 or 10 minutes if that's okay. But this is recorded. You can come back anytime. Or if you're like, I get it, I don't need you bop on. It's fine. This passes. And now, okay, this makes sense. We're gonna send the hey, here's a class. Price. We're going to set our wiggly babies, and we're going to text a line to the right. And I feel like today's running a little bit long because there's 90 little tiny lessons. I don't want to abandon you. Okay, so they're on different lines, and that's kind of stressing me out. But I bet we're going to get better and better at this again, yeah? I'm going to check our code. Let's go ahead. Shall we just do 2 or 3 more of these? Because I'm mean, I'm going to abandon you halfway through and force you, never force you, but gently encourage you to finish the rest on your own. There are 90 lessons, but they're just these boop, 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 little tiny self contained ones. If you don't finish all of them, that's not a problem. We only have live stream class Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So hopefully there's a big blob of time to get caught up. Yeah. And homework is stressful. But me saying, hey, don't burn out, don't do too much. We never take attendance. We never check that. Did you finish your homework? It's always soft and slow and okay. We've got a ton of folks who joined us for the last boot camp who didn't quite finish, and that's fine. And they're joining us again. And I love that. Your lives are more important than CSS. Your lives are more important than doing this right now. Take the time you need and go as slow or as fast as you want. But yeah, definitely prioritize up the important stuff over this. So one thing we're going to describe, which is super important, are block level elements. And so there's 2 types of elements in HTML. Well, there's a lot of types of elements. One is block. And what we mean by block element is say, hey, when I create a new one of these elements, it magically, automatically gets put on a new line. These elements like to sit on their own line by default, and that says we can change it. Whereas inline says, hey, you can go ahead and put as many of me on one line as will fit. And I'm going to be super chill with this. So what we're going to do is by default, these are block level elements. We are going to override their rules, okay? We are going to change the world. So here, I'm going to add a class to my article now. Whoop, heck, heck, heck. And the class I'm adding is item. And the cool thing is this is going to set rules that impact everybody who lives inside this. What I'm really going to mess with is my children. That sounds scary. What I'm really going to do is change my children. No. So you're making a really good point here. Hey, oh heck, where'd you go, my love? You know what? A lot of people learn best, and there's a lot of, and we're going to learn about this with our guest speaker on Thursday. That chunking, doing a little bit per day instead of big blobs all at once, is way better for learning. But also, if you skip a day here or there, it's not going to hurt you. Nothing bad. I know everything's streak based. I've got a Duolingo streak. I've got a fitness streak. I don't care about streaks. I just care that y'all are learning in ways that are really sustainable for you. Where am I? Who am I? Okay, so the P elements are nested inside the article element. So I can style all of the P elements that are nested in this class by stacking these 2 things. This is going to be wild, right? Because we learned how to do these separately, and this is going to feel weird. So I'm going to say, hey, I want to set a class selector for this, but wait. These rules I'm going to set aren't for this class. They're for all of these elements that live inside this class. And we'll note the big difference here is we don't have that comma. Yeah? I'm not saying you are going to forget and add the comma. I always forget and add the comma, but it's not a big deal. That's one of those goofy muscle memory problems. And it's fine. Nobody is going, like, we're adults. I hope, yeah, most of us. Hopefully you're not as old as me. If you are, it's all right being old. Nobody's going to pick on you for making a programming mistake. And if they do, I will think of horrible empty threats to make. Like, yeah, everybody makes goofy programming mistakes all the time. It's chill. So here, to override the natural block elements, we're going to change this to display property. I'm going to say, hey, inline clock, inline. I think as soon as I do the K, have I done? Oof. Look how, see, I was just saying, oh, you can make goofy mistakes, all you. Display. Ha ha ha. Okay, as soon as I actually spelled things right, it said, oh, cool. We're no longer doing block. We want to put these in line on the same line. We can just have them come up and chill out up here. Well, that's chill. Let's do two more. That's not quite halfway. So mean. So, okay, that's closer. And the reason that the price didn't stay on the right is inline block elements only take up the width of the content. So it is on the right, but there's not that much space. Let's go ahead and take the flavor and price and let's give them a lot of space. I'm going to say, hey, you, flavor, I want you to take up half of your parent element, which means half of this cream burlywood colored div. I want you to take up half. Yeah? And then on the right, for price, I want you to take up half as well. So let's go ahead and we are going to have to quit in a second just because I keep getting distracted and just thinking about, usually coffee looking at this. So I want a width. I'm going to make you 50% wide. Oh, wow. And that's not quite what we want. And that's because our right aligned price isn't taking up enough space. Let's bully her. I'm not sure why HTML elements are girls in my head. That's not actually technically correct. Well, I think they have a gender. What have I done there? That feels wrong. Huh. Where have you gone? That looks very wrong. But you're telling me it's wrong. I bet we fix it in the next couple of ones. Oh no, this means well, that did not work. I really like Free Code Camp for giving us mistakes to see, like, try the thing. Oof, it broke. Oh, and here we've gone outside. How about 49%? Let's, and this is exactly what I said, like, hey, if something breaks so you don't know what's going on, experiment, wiggle it around a bit. I mean, 49% doesn't seem to have, 49% for each class. Okay, we just needed that little 1% of wiggle room on either side. Yeah. It's okay. It's just broken code. Broken code can't really hurt us. Well, not until we work for a living. Well, yeah, I work with code for a living. Then it can hurt you all day. We're just going to look at the next challenge. Okay. And we're going to continue to do these nice little tiny tweaks. Is that all right? What it absolutely can hurt you is let's take a look at our homework. So we're working from the new responsive web design certification. We're going to come all the way down. And here for the CSS, we've done a little bit less than half. We've got a lot to go. If you have the time and if it's not a bother, I think you're going to get the most out of this if you finish all of the CSS. If you don't have the time or if you've got a lot going on, it's fine. There's going to be a ton of time during the weekend, or there's going to be a ton of time in coming weeks. If you're watching this in a recorded version, that's even better. This is your own pace. Nobody's going to speed you along. There is well, I mean, you could give up forever, and that would be a little disappointing unless you decide to do something else exciting. But there is no way to fail. Everything's fine. So I'm going to take this away. Oh, wait! I lied. You have two pieces of homework. The first is please try and finish CSS if you can. The other piece of homework is you've got to have the most relaxing day available to you. So if it's nighttime, you have to have a relaxing day tomorrow, all day tomorrow. You can't. But if it's morning, you just need to be as soft and gentle to yourself all day, not even just programming, all day. Isn't that brutal? Like the whole world is big and hard and stressful. The least we can do is be soft to each other and to ourselves. So we're going to go ahead and lovingly say goodbye. I'm going to be back tomorrow at this very, very same time. And what we're going to do is we're going to be taking more of a look at weird stuff with colors. And the next couple of sessions are going to feel more and more like CSS art. If you need help or if you get stuck as you do your homework, the things you want to do is ask for help. And don't worry, outside the stream, you can do that on the forum. or you do that on the Discord, and that's going to be okay. Or you can look it up on the web. You can DuckDuckGo, Google, Stack Overflow is a really good resource people like, or just spend some time experimenting and getting weird. I'm going to see all of you tomorrow. Thank you so much for letting me learn with you. Bye, everybody.